What's good, everyone? Just here in the back seat gaming. This is just a quick video, just about my history with Pokemon, like my ups and downs with it, how I got into it as a kid, came back to it, left again, back to it. I think it'd be fun just to kind of like have a more laid back, like I guess retrospective. Let me know how it went for you growing up and whatnot. I think with all the hype behind it, like people fighting each other over Costco's during Black Friday for Pokemon cards, and people complaining about the new Pokemon games and how it's just like the biggest franchise in the world and they can't spare XYZ for the fans. It's like, okay, maybe I think it'd be nice just to have a quick little video getting back to the root of things as to why we like this series, you know? I was born in '94, and I'll be honest, I remember when Pokemon first came out only through like the strangest of things. It was the KFC, of all places for some reason, had a promotional deal with the Pokemon company. This is how you know this is when Pokemon was first starting up, because for whatever reason, that was like, I guess, one of the earliest companies or fast food chains they chose to partner with. And I remember I got like a little stackable like cube puzzle. I think it might have been Pikachu on it or something with like it was real simple. It was just a little cube puzzle, 4 little blocks. You put them together to build an image. This was so early on that my mom thought they were all called Pikachu. Or no, sorry, I thought they were all called Pikachu. And my mom was actually the one that kept correcting me, like, no, like the little yellow guy is Pikachu and they're all called Pokemon. Now, when they say like the word like Pokemania, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but back when I was growing up as a kid in the 90s, early 2000s, I mean, I think Mania was honestly selling it a little bit short. It was just complete like pandemonium. Like every single kid my age around that time knew what Pokemon was. And the thing that was like the keg explosion wasn't necessarily like the games, maybe a little bit with the trading cards, I don't know. That one gets a little fuzzy, but I remember the exact thing afterwards that kicked it off after that fun cube puzzle from KFC was the anime. When Pokemon started airing as like a 90s cartoon, early 2000s cartoon or whatever on WB, that's when it became just like secondhand nature to every like child in America. And the gist of it really was just as simple as like you kept up with the cartoon, you collected the cards, you had no idea how to play, of course, and then eventually, I mean, maybe because I'm a little bit like the original games came out like in 98, I think here, 98 or 99. Like maybe in Japan, I think a little bit earlier. I can't remember. But a lot of kids my age specifically didn't really have like the original Game Boy ones. I think some of us had Game Boy Colors, but most of us had like a Game Boy Advance onwards. So me included, we all got into Pokemon games, starting with Gen 3. A lot of people my age, their first experience was either like Fire Red, Leaf Green, or one of like the Hoenn Trio games, one of the two. I was one of the blessed few people on our block that had dial-up internet, which is way back, if you remember enough of that. Man, it's gonna be like my catchphrases video. Did you remember this? But it was basically the type of internet that like you had to make sure no one was on the phone in the house to use. It was very, very slow, but to me, like it was real easy to get obsessed with like, honestly, I would just look up like my favorite games and stuff at the time with the phrase like cheat codes or walkthroughs or secrets or tips, tricks. Like I really just wanted to know more about the stuff that I was playing. Talking about the games and stuff like that with kids at school, we would all share like secret ideas or theories and stuff like that about what we had, where it was like, okay, like I heard you can get like a Pokemon that's not even out yet if you were to go like to this cave after beating the Elite Four like 10 times and stuff like that. There's a classic one for like people who are into Gen 1 where it's like the copy of Mew under the truck type of deal. Like that never stopped. Kids just kept rumors and stuff like that going on. And because I had access to the internet, I just got obsessed, I think, with like, hold on now, like what can I like verify, you know, like what's actually legit and what's just like a TMZ rumor. But because of that, I was like able to make friends because I became kind of like almost like the auteur, I don't know, like the librarian or whatever of Pokemon facts. Like I was able to just like look up like, hey, this is actually BS, or no, this is actually legit. And I remember because of the internet, I also was able to get glimpses of like how much different it was in America for us compared to like Japan, you know? So like at that age, I was able to look up like banned episodes of the cartoon and stuff like that, where it was like, whoa, like I didn't know. That's why we never saw Porygon in the anime, you know? It's like, okay, like, well, poor kids, I guess. Well, then I know I have my own history with that too. Reminiscing on all of this, you know, it's real easy to think like, hey, it was all part of the trend. It was all part of like, it's just everyone got caught up, you know? And part of that was true. It was like very much like, you know, some kids were just into it because it was trendy. It was popular with everyone, whether you were like a sporty kid, a nerdy kid, the kid that drew, the kid that was the class clown. Just everyone was a big fan of Pokemon. And it dawned on me that really what it was at the end of the day was honestly, I think, just like the Pokemon themselves. Because as much as I'm going to gush about other stuff as the video continues, at the end of the day, like I think every kid was able to name their favorite. At the end of the day, every kid was able to recite, at the very least, the original 151 by memory. That includes the girls that were more into like Barbies and stuff like that versus Pokemon, but everyone just knew it, you know. That I think to this day, only because I grew up like near a gift shop, which my aunt worked at, and it was real awesome because she had very easy access to like, I guess like distribution channels, whatever you want to call it, but it's easy to get trading cards there. And we saw a couple of explosions, you know. Digimon was also huge. I got a couple of Digimon cards, which I wish I actually kind of took off a little bit more. Digimon, like, honestly, some of the designs for Digimon, like, kind of clear Pokemon to a little bit. Like, they're a little too cool, in my opinion. I think Pokemon does a better balance of the weird and cute designs. Anyways, getting off topic, I also saw the other big trading card craze, which was Yu-Gi-Oh!, which still massive, you know, especially with the boys and stuff like that. Like, it was humongous. You know, we all also kept up with the cartoon and bought cards without knowing how to play and just kind of like vibed out, you know, to our favorites and stuff like that. It's iconic. But, you know, like none of our parents were able to tell you, like, from memory, like what any of the characters from Yu-Gi-Oh! Were called, what any of the games like were about, what the trading cards like looked like. That one, I think, despite having its staying power, which I think it really only has staying power for the card game. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh!, then that's kind of like the crowd that's keeping that whole like franchise alive. But not for Pokemon. Pokemon today is bigger than ever. So it really came down, I think, to the Mons themselves. And it was a kind of like a lightning in a bottle situation, just the right place at the right time. In retrospective, a lot of the people that got into the very original games, I even gave them a shot later on, like in life. They were kind of like very sloppily made, like just very rushed. If you take a look at the original pixel art even from those games, like there's something that's like if that had been the finalized design for the Pokemons, like the Gen 1 sprites and stuff like that, I honestly don't think the series would have lasted. Everyone's got their own order, I guess, of how they got into the series, right? Like, you have my pipeline. I've got block puzzle toys at KFC, to the cartoon, to the trading card games, to the actual video games. The video games came way later. I'm sure for other kids, it's like different. I think it just came down to like just demographics or whatever, you know. Like in my playground, you wanted to bring the Pokemon games to school, then like, you know, your Game Boy's gonna be locked up in a supervisor's office somewhere for the rest of its life. Eventually the trading cards too, we got a little too into those, and I think a kid must have gotten like ripped off or gotten into a fight or something like that over a Pokemon card. So eventually those were banned too. But after like, despite both of those not being allowed, the thing that had the lasting power at the end of the day was the designs of the Mons. And, you know, who could blame anyone? Pokemon does this amazing thing between like making something that you want, like in your living room, like you want it as like a companion, like this could feasibly exist. Like it feels like a real creature. You like it. It comes off as something that eats, sleeps, has feelings, has hints of like real life animal counterparts or whatever. But it's still like, I think I heard someone say once, like every Pokemon is someone's favorite. When it came down to the games, like I knew right away that I was like, okay, like you take the original games. Like, I mean, I played Leaf Green versus Gen 1 because I got into it later. But every time I started up a save there, because I started a few, I tried all three, and you know what? I was, truth be told, I'm a Blastoise guy. That's what I always would go for Squirtle starting, you know? So everyone had like their like ideal starter. You could talk to anyone on the playground or anyone in my group of family, friends, or whatever. Like I could tell you their favorite starter. When it came to the trading cards, it's like, I don't really care, but I will trade you for, like, I love the Togepi line. So anything Togepi related. I also love like anything that's like Slowbro like related, or what's like another really good Gen 1 Pokemon that I like. Anything that's like Porygon related. Funnily enough, I mentioned his band episode earlier. I think one thing I envy a lot in kids now, or maybe it still happens, I don't know. I could just be talking out of my butt here. But I think kids now are a lot braver, maybe. Like they're a lot more courageous about the stuff that they're into. You know, like they don't care about being seen as nerdy or being seen as like I was some type of way, I suppose, you know. I guess I'm like I wasn't like forced to stop liking the series, you know. Like it wasn't like I was being cyberbullied or like having my arm twisted to stop liking Pokemon. No, it was more like involved than that, you know. It was very much like no, like I kind of consciously started to drift away from it, mostly because the peer pressure, I guess, came in the form of like media and like just like kind of being like, oh no, actually I'm more like into this now, you know. So drifting away from Pokemon, the last games that I tried really, like it really was only Gen 3 was what I was around for. Like I tried a little bit of Gold, like, you know, the Game Boy Color Gold, but Emerald, Sapphire, and Leaf Green were really like the main things that I was into. And they were great games, and I have amazing memories with them. And I kind of talk a little bit about the games themselves. Obviously, this is a gaming channel in a bit. But that's honestly where I started to drift off. I think because a lot of people did stop riding the trend or whatever. Like I always hear back in retrospectives that like, yeah, Pokemon like had a little bit of a dip in popularity around Gen 3. And despite that being like one of my favorite generations, like I have more nostalgia low key for like like the Hoenn starters and a lot of the Hoenn Pokemon than the actual like OG 151 or like the gold and silver starters and stuff like that. But I think other things took precedence, you know, like skating was a lot cooler. Like anime, like actual anime where they have blood in it, like Naruto and stuff like that was cooler. And so I think naturally, you know, my friends stopped playing with trading cards. So then trading cards weren't as fun anymore to me because that was, I mean, I liked collecting, but I got ripped off a lot too. So I just kind of sort of held on to my collection, but everyone stopped playing, talking about it. And I think really that's kind of is what the nail in the head was, right? It was like everyone stopped talking about it. And so it wasn't as exciting to me anymore. And I started getting into other things. Middle school was full of like, you know, like you want to be seen a certain way, and that's fine. That's how like a 12-year-old, 11-year-old or whatever should think. And low-key never really honestly stopped being nerdy anyways. Like instead of getting into, I don't know, like the heck were like kids in 2007 into, like instead of getting into like Akon and freaking no, I liked Akon actually, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like I didn't become like a goth kid or like a scene kid or a skater or any like subculture thing. I don't know what you call them, but you get what I'm saying. I hope. I just kept being nerdy, you know, like if anything, I got really into drawing and like got really obsessed with like other types of video games instead. I think because my friends again were no longer talking about Pokemon, I had no reason to, so I just kind of kept pursuing my own interests. And I really liked again like Sonic the Hedgehog and it's like other gaming series around that time. Like the Guitar Hero series was a lot of fun back then. The Tony Hawk series was a lot of fun back then. And so that's just kind of how I gravitated towards that. And I remember when I came back to it, was actually like not that long after Diamond and Pearl had come out. I remember seeing commercials for it on TV and stuff like that, because they were low key trying to get people back into it. I think in passing, I thought like just kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat. Okay, cool. Pokemon's still going on. Right on, man. And then I remember being, my family, we would take like trips all the time to Mexico. It was, if we were able to do it, we would try to do it like in the summer, at least for like a couple weeks, if not longer. And this is around the time that our little village in Mexico, our little town, started getting access to the internet, like cyber cafes, they called them, or el ciber is how you would say it in Spanish. And it was real neat because you just kind of plop down like a certain amount of like money. It's kind of like going to like I don't know, like a Staples or a library or something like that in America, where you put in a certain amount of money and then you're able to just use the internet for like an hour or something like that. We had long moved on now from the age of the dial-up internet. Now it was like actual like early connection, like kind of cool internet, where things loaded up faster. And so we used it a lot, honestly, for piracy, truth be told. But another thing that we also did was I started to remember, I can't remember honestly like how I stumbled into it again. I just remember like thinking like, hey, like, you guys remember Pokemon? Like I'd be hanging out with like cousins and stuff like that, who were also from America. They lived here, so they also got the full-blown, what you would call it, like I guess American, American Pokemon craze. And they were kind of ambivalent, like, yeah, it was pretty cool. Like I'd forgotten about it, and then I just honestly just had the thought of like, oh, I wonder what's going on with it. Truth be told, that summer was real significant because I think it was when we first got DSs, actually, Nintendo DSs. And thinking about it now, that might have been why I looked it up to begin with, is because we spent a lot of time, if we weren't outside exploring or playing sports or something like that, we would just share like a copy of Mario Kart and like obsessively play the multiplayer between all of us and stuff like that. So I think we just started to look up like what else was on the DS period, like what else was there to play. And then hearing about the fact that the Pokemon series had an entry on the DS, which to me was already like, DS games back in the day were pretty mind-blowing to me because it's like borderline 3D. Like they're slightly, like they're actually like nicer quality than the Nintendo 64. Maybe not in texture, but in like detail and like polygons or whatever. And I remember hearing that they had a version of it for the DS, and I was like, whoa, okay. Like, I wonder what that would look like, because there's so much about the original Pokemon games. Like the thing about technological limits, especially I think with video games, like technology limits and other things like movies or like music, it goes down a different route of creativity, like there's like an album by this, well, not like she's well known as Bjork, for example. She has an album called Vespertine. She made like a lot of drum beats and used samples from stuff in her house, like an ice tray cracking or like shuffling a deck of cards to use in a drum pad. So her limitations in music, can inspire cool stuff like that. Or you have things like lo-fi music. It's purposely recorded onto a medium that's like purposely like amateur sounding or degraded, and it's kind of cool there, or take with movies where you have to get creative and like, there's so many movies that I can't think of off the top of my head right now where like they filmed them like in the middle of public because they didn't have the budget, Rocky actually comes to mind, where they filmed him running up the stairs super fast before like the police would get there because they didn't have money for permits, So I guess what I'm saying is that limits, whether it's technological or budgetary, like it always inspires creativity. And I think with video games, it's extra cool because video games were always intended, in my opinion, to be like, for kids, like that's kind of like the primary demographic from the get-go. And so there's always like this like childlike purity that's come through with games. And when you're limited, like take the Pokemon games on the Advance, right? When you're limited, like you can take a look at you go walk into a town, right? Like say like, I don't know, like Little Root Town, like literally the starting town in Emerald. I mean, literally, it's 3 buildings, right? It's like your house, your rival's house, and the professor's lab. And so it's like you could take it at face value, and you could just be like, well, like, okay, like, where's the restroom? Where's Walmart? Where's where's literally anything you need for a functioning society? But anyways, like, I would think instead, like, if you take Little Root Town, like, oh, okay, like, I wonder what, like, the mom's house in this looks like. You're not able to access it because I'm sure it's like a private room, right? Like, I know I understood as a kid that it was like a game, but I was like, the representation of your mom's room is like off limits to you because you probably wouldn't care about it because you're a kid. You walk out into the town, and I would see how small it was, and it was like, I wonder what the other residents are like. They probably honestly live, like, you only get an access to like a small part of the town. The illusions that these games would create because of their limitations, inspired me to start thinking more deeply about the possibilities. Like, how would I think about these worlds, or how would that like work? Like, what was it really representing? Like, I understood that, like, the idea that the routes between the towns and stuff being that small, like, logically it wouldn't make sense in real life. Like, the entire Hoenn region would basically be like smaller than like the smallest town in America. But I think those games really understood that sense of childlike purity, and instead, like, let your imagination run free. Like, they were confident with what they were putting in the games, that, like, that was the thing that sold the kid on them, that they were on this grand adventure with their friends. And so when you say that there's a Pokemon game on the Nintendo DS, which was Pearl and Diamond, had already been out for a little bit at the time, I was like, well, yeah, I want to see what a more evolved version of that looks like. And I didn't have them yet, but what I did have again was the internet. So I remember being in Mexico, and you could totally just like hop on to Cerebi. Cerebi.net was like the place back in the day to get everything that's like up to date and upcoming about the Pokemon series. So at the time I didn't have the game, so I remember just digging through, like, they had like a section for the Pokedex on there. So you would dig through, and I was able to see like all of the new Pokemon. I got really obsessed with how they sounded. You could play back their cries and stuff like that, and I remember being so impressed by how much better the sound quality was. Like, they weren't terrible, especially on the Game Boy Advance. I mean, some of the original 151 like cries in the game, like, they're very iconic. Like, I could totally jam out to Magnemite to this day, or Victory Bell sounds like it's singing. And then the advanced games, they got a little bit better. They sounded like a little bit more like real animals. It was cool, like, you get those like low quality samples and stuff. But there was definitely a big leap in Diamond and Pearl for the audio quality. So I was like, whoa, like, these sound like actual animals. And Diamond and Pearl also had this thing where, like, that the overworld was like kind of in 3D a little bit. Like, certain aspects of it were like actual, like, well, what the DS could handle, I guess, but like actual 3D was involved. They were still sprites, and it was still 2D overall. But just seeing how much the graphics had taken a leap forward, seeing like certain Pokemon got evolutions that I didn't expect. One of my favorite lines, I think I mentioned it earlier, the Togepi line. Like, they had a brand new evolution for Togetic, Togekiss, which I was like, whoa, like, I'm picking that one when I get my copy of Pearl. That's going to be mine's. And then, yeah, you still had the anime, you had the cartoons and stuff like that airing. Like, I recognized Lucario right away, and I was like, oh, yeah, I think that movie about that guy came out recently. I saw that on somewhere. But the Diamond and Pearl games was like, it was so exciting. Like, I was already looking forward to getting back into the series because of it. And I remember thinking very clearly at the time that they weren't really that cool to be into, but I was just so in love with like the possibilities of how cool the games could be, and the like just all the upgrades and just like all the new mons. And like, I really do think that that's kind of what was like the main like drawback in for me, was just seeing, once I saw all the new Pokemon stuff, like the new designs, I was like, man, they still got it. Like, I cannot wait to get my hands on this. And then sure enough, eventually I did, and it was a great time. Cerebi was the place I was able to keep up with when Platinum came out, because every Pokemon game's got to have its third version. I guess they don't do that anymore. Maybe in the age of DLC, they've caught on that people would be really, really mad at that. So they stopped doing that. But I remember very clearly, like, it wasn't all that cool. Like, I didn't get back into the trading cards, for example, because no one really still collected or played them or whatever. If anything, even with Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, like, I remember that took a big hit. Like, no one was really talking about any of that stuff, except for, like, obviously, like, really dedicated people. And living here in California, when my family moved, we moved closer to the city industry here in California, which houses probably world famous by now, Frankensons. So I was able to go every now and then to Frankensons, and you'd see like all the cool memorabilia and trading cards and gazillion things I regret not buying, honestly, back like when I had the funds for it and stuff in high school even too. Like, just like, yeah, they really still got it, like the games look fantastic. The Pokemon look fantastic, especially. I mean, the cartoon, I think, was very much so the more like still aimed like directly at kids for. So I'll be honest, I didn't get back into the anime. And again, I didn't get back into the trading cards because no one else was. So the games were kind of like the only anime back in, and being on Cerebi, like, let me find out more things about it, and it let me like keep up with Platinum, because that's how I found out too that like the games would come out in Japan first and then over here. And so I was able to like keep up with like all the like the new stuff that was going to show up in Platinum, like the Distortion World. I remember seeing that revealed, and Giratina was going to have a new form, and like it was just so much fun. It was like my first experience with what I probably only get now from like reading manga. Like, I keep up with One Piece every week, and obviously you wait for that to get translated, and you hear little whispers and stuff like that about what the new chapter is going to be about leading up to it, but you don't really get like the full thing till you're experiencing it. So same with Platinum, that was that for me. And a curious thing happened. This is around the time Filing Now was in high school, and I started having friends that like pulled me back into trading cards. Not really Pokemon, more so Yu-Gi-Oh, because they played it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'll give this a shot. I remember this from when I was a kid. And then I had fun, so got back into that, and I was able to bust out my old collection of Pokemon cards again. And then everyone else in high school that literally, like, I heard most of them just like zilch about Pokemon. And this is around the time Heart Gold and Soul Silver was about to come out. And then suddenly Pokemon Mania was back on again, and everyone in my high school like had Pokewalkers on their pants. And I was like, I didn't know you owned a DS, let alone any of the Pokemon games. But no, sure enough, yeah, everyone was right back on for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then absolutely deserved, because I mean, they're remakes, and Johto itself, really, like, I got a lot of problems, I guess, like more so the gameplay experience type of side, because the Pokemon in Johto are great, the region's beautiful, the games are just jam-packed, so many features, like, and so many little quirks that, like, I think even further expanded like the sense of childlike wonder, because it was like, hey, if you go to the Union Cave on Fridays, you'll run into a Lapras. Like, Lapras will show up every Friday there, and you can catch one, and it's like, damn. And it makes complete sense why you couldn't find it in the wild in like the previous generation, or like the reason why Team Rocket never came back is because there's this whole event with Celebi that it gets explained in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and like tells you about like how you stopped him from restarting. It's a whole thing, like from restarting the evil team, and it's like just the way they built the world is what they focused on, and they did it in a way that was like very like you had to kind of still fill in the gaps in a sense, like not so much with the lore, the story, and like how everything was designed, but I think more so just with how you took in the world, like how you took in the experience was like left up to your imagination in a sense. And to this day, I would still say that Generation 4 honestly is probably my favorite overall, like out of all of them. I think there's just something that's very like, it was the last generation to me that still hit that sweet spot of like all the designs are great, everything's very like cool. Like there's just enough of like little bits of like oh dang, stuff's getting real, but also it's still just like this is fun. It's just like a hero's adventure, you know. It's just a kid's childlike wonder type of experience. Black and White came out afterwards, and that one was cool too. And I think honestly, I only kept up with friends that were into competitive Pokemon, which I was not. And the actual games were a lot of fun and stuff like that. I never got too much into like the whole EV training and all that other stuff that you needed for competitive. But it was nice talking to my friends about it. And I mean, same deal as the last games. The region design, the new Pokemon designs are great. People really did not like it because they tried kind of like a soft reset type of deal. That did not go down too well. I do remember that actually. And Pokemania or whatever, like, was honestly pretty fully dead in the water, starting with honestly even Gen 4. I think Gen 4 really was like, Gen 4 to 5 maybe was like the biggest dip in popularity for sure. I got a 3DS, which meant like keeping up with the series once I made the full leap to 3D. And then that was a big deal too. That was the first time I remember being pretty disappointed, I think, with the Pokemon games. Not so much like, I think more so just because like of how much was left out. I feel like because there was so much in X and Y that was like unexplained or just kind of felt like it could have been way more. If I remember right, like there's really not too much of a post game, truth be told, in those. Like it was very barren in the sense of like what I was used to with the other games. Like we had just come off of Gen 4, which had like, you know, the Battle Frontier and all those little fun weekly events that I just mentioned earlier, you know, and like just little details like that showed you that the developers put a lot of thought into it, you know. You had following Pokemon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you take them to a certain place, you know, depending on who you take where, they'll have a different reaction. But it's stuff like that I think really sells the experience to a kid. And X and Y didn't really have any of that, you know. The Pokemon designs were still great. The actual region was still pretty cool, you know, but it was kind of a little bit of a lull. And I remember playing that led into like the Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby remakes, and I was like, all right, awesome, you know, like now they're doing my generation, you know, like this is the one that I grew up with. So fantastic seeing all the changes they made there. Like, hey, like you want to fly around the region in one of the Lottie twins, you know, here you go. You want to finally go into space and fight Deoxys, despite all the playground rumors that you had to debunk. Like, yes, if you click on the white rock right there by the Space Center, Deoxys will definitely show up. But it was like, no, this is like the real deal, you know? To me, Pokemon was just like trading card games, not really. I think by the time Sun and Moon came out, for example, I was already like a college student. Anime, no, not really. You know, again, like cartoons was directly aimed at kids, so just forget about that. So that's really around the time, I think, like Black and White to X and Y, like that transition was when I was basically just like into the games. Really, that's all it was. And what happened is that I think it must have been with X and Y, because I remember Sun and Moon, I just kind of picked up begrudgingly after what happened. What happened is that X and Y, I think the way to transfer Mons from the previous generation to X and Y, you needed a service called Pokemon Bank, I think. Something like that. But essentially it was literally just like extra storage, you know. It was like paying for like, I don't know, like a Dropbox or something like that. You just get extra space to store your Mons. And that was the only way to transfer your older Mons up to the newest games. And I was into the games enough that I had Pokemon from like my childhood saves on like from like Leaf Green, Emerald, some of them really rare, you know. One of the things I found out through the internet, for example, is when I was a kid, still on the dial-up and everything, like what the event Pokemon were, like Emerald and stuff like that. So I had a Mew, a Ho-Oh, a Lugia that I got because I bought an Action Replay off the internet too, off of eBay. Or Frankincense, one of the two places, who can know. But the point being is that I had like maybe a shiny or two that I had found like legitimately. Like there's a really good collection. Like it was a very thorough collection. Tons of Wi-Fi events on the 4th generation when they started doing like those like Toys R Us or in-person events where you would download the Pokemon onto your DS. And when I transfer everything over onto the service, Pokemon Home, um, at one point, I remember being ready to transfer everything over, and essentially what had happened is that Pokemon Home had like corrupted, and so essentially like 80% of my mons were just like, they just vanished, they were gone. And I remember being so pissed off that I honestly just stopped keeping up with it. Truth be told, I think if I'm remembering this even right, it was X and Y where this happened, because I think I picked it up with that intention, and then I picked up Sun and Moon a lot later on. Like I didn't get it like release date because of that, because it was like, I don't want to deal with this. You know, you just got rid of like my childhood icons. I'm sad, but you just kind of decide like, hey, whatever, it's not a big deal. You know, like life is life. And I got back into it casually. I never picked up a Switch, so I never picked up like the Switch games for that reason. Plus, they also didn't look kind of like quite my jam. I mean, I haven't played them, so I can't tell you, but the idea of a fully 3D Pokemon game is like, it sounds so exciting, like in my head, like on paper, that should be like a great experience. But so far, everything I've seen from it hasn't 100% sold me on that idea. So they look like fun games, they look cool, but there's nothing that's like, I absolutely need to go play this. It almost feels like even a little bit of that childlike wonder like is lost a little bit, you know, like they don't reveal enough of the world, but they also like make it seem like you should be able to go to places when you can't. Like there's just little things like that they obviously don't have time for anymore, because it's not just a simple little, you know, 2D pixel game. And so it's just like, okay, like it doesn't feel like it was really for me, the Switch games, you know, like they weren't designed with me in mind. A lot easier, nothing cool in terms of like you got to go do this in-story event for this legendary, you know, like that kind of took a backseat too, because I think they figured like kids would just rather have it, you know, just here you go, we'll give you the download code for the new legendary, which is a practice that didn't start with the Switch games, I know, but still, I think that kind of hopefully making my point okay. But what I did still keep up with was like the new Pokemon, and even then, man, on the Switch, in Sun and Moon, regional forms, mega evolutions, like they were still killing it in the design department. And so I got back into it over the last year or so, I want to say, like on a more casual level, like, hey, like let me pick up like maybe some of my favorite, like, you know, a couple of Pokemon packs, a couple of trading cards. Oops, sorry, that's full of scalpers now. And if you want a whiff of a Pokemon pack, you're going to be expecting to pay 4 times of retail for anything. Dang. All right, you know, like I got to see a couple of Switch generations go by. Maybe I'll pick it up on the cheap now and give it a shot. Nope, tariffs. The original Switch is actually more expensive now than it was or would have been when the Switch 2 came out. And everyone hangs on to their physical games now because, you know, if you go digital, it kind of goes into the whole like you'll owe nothing and be happy with it philosophy. So, nope, we're not going to give you a discount on those. Ah, okay. And then, I mean, the anime, I don't know what they're doing. You know, Ash Ketchum is not even in it anymore. So it's its own beast now for sure. 100%. I think it's like completely catered towards a different demographic now for sure. I think honestly, even like more Japanese. I think kids over here don't really keep up with the anime too regularly compared to over there. But what I did get into, you know, is like, okay, like, you know, I pick up trading cards when I can, you know, and I pick up older stuff when I can too of my favorite stuff, you know, like if I find vintage Togepi cards with like artwork that I really like, then I'll go for it, you know, or trade for it. When it comes to the games, like, yeah, I don't have a Switch, you know, but there's a humongous emerging bomb hacking community that like is based off of one of my favorite generations, the 3rd gen, you know, and there's all these passionate fans making projects for me to try out, and it's really easy to try out and it's free, you know. So it's been a real interesting journey in terms of like seeing this thing from my childhood that honestly I don't think I put, like it didn't become like my thing, you know, like it wasn't like my favorite thing, but I loved it a lot. And you see it like go through all these waves, you know, times when it's popular, like when Pokemon Go came back, I saw it. Everyone was suddenly super into Pokemon again. Why can't I find trading cards right now? It's because, the app or whatever with the trading card virtual app has made them impossible to find again. And seeing times when it's dead, where it's like, when Gen 5 came out and everyone hated the designs, when like the very like tail end of like, I want to say like X and Y to Sun and Moon, it was pretty crickets right there too. And yet somehow still the Pokemon series was like the biggest, most profitable like media franchise in the whole world. It's like, what is going on here? Which is to say, what's the point of this video? Not much. Just I think that's kind of my perspective with the series, how I got into it, and like, where is it going from here? I don't know. It seems like right now this like Pokemon bubble is more so like people that aren't really into it just dumping loads of resources into it, whether it's the games, especially the trading cards or anything else, like collectibles, memorabilia. It's something that's, I think, is temporary. I hope they can get it fixed, because I think kids really aren't a fan. Like, it's mostly us adults now that are a fan of the series, but they obviously want to keep it going. They obviously want it to keep making money. So I guess we'll see how they handle that, because you got to make sure that kids are able to get into it, and if they can't access it, period, then that makes things a little difficult. But it's just such a different world that created the Pokemon series to begin with, that I can't help but wonder if it's gonna mature with us. Will they figure out a way to bring it to real life or whatever? Like, will they get a realistic Pokemon game? Will they bring back more of those childlike wonder type of experiences where they do get to put a little bit more resources and stuff into the games? If anything, I think overall what I really wanted to remember was just the Pokemon themselves. And I think especially seeing trading cards with full art and stuff on it now, especially seeing all the cute videos of people sitting down with their Pokemon in the games around the campfires and just interacting with them. I think the series is going to really start to just dig into that a lot more. And I think it's the right move, because even now, I think every Pokemon is someone's favorite. And every time a new gen premieres, that's honestly the thing I keep up with right away. Right away I want to know what the new mons look like, what the new forms look like, what the new gimmick is like. And it's always just as fun as when I was a kid. But I guess that'll do it for this little mini retrospective. Just stuff I wanted to gush about, stuff that happened to me, stuff that I experienced growing up with the series. What about you? Are you as old as I am? Are you one of those miraculous, younger fans of Pokemon? You got into it, I don't know, you were 9 years old when the Nintendo Switch one came out? Who knows? But I'd like to hear about it, because it's something that I was talking about with my friends the other day, and it was a lot of fun to reminisce. But other than that, this has been me in the back seat, front seat, I guess this time, gaming. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Please, if you can, like and subscribe. That's my little YouTube outro, my YouTube formalities, but it's important. It really helps me out, and I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Let's talk more Pokemon.